What's going on, Packers fans? Happy Wednesday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack-A-Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Pack-A-Day Podcast. Hope your Wednesday is treating you well. We already had one episode today with the Paul Farrington Show. If you're on the audio side of things, we had two Paul Farrington Show, as well as Dusty, Steve, and Sarah holding down the Wednesday fort on the audio side as well. Make sure to check those out if you haven't already. But we're going to be talking to Paul Bretl in just a moment for a bonus episode. Always love talking to Paul. He's got such a great pulse on the team. We'll get to that in just a moment. Before we get there, wanted to do our What's on the Horizon presented by Schreiber Horizon. We, of course, have got Packers, Panthers upcoming this Sunday, noon, Lambeau Field. Packers open as 12.5-point favorites. Now, the big thing to keep an eye on this week is the status of Bryce Young. Is it Bryce Young or is it Andy Dalton? Now, listen, Green Bay is going to be favored heavily no matter what in this game. That's not going to change anything, but that's still the big thing to keep an eye on when it comes to Carolina. Carolina just got blasted by the Bills this past week. They're going to want some level of just normalcy after a big-time blowout loss at home against Buffalo. So I'm sure Carolina is going to come in with a little bit of extra motivation in this one. And again, the huge thing to keep an eye on is it Andy Dalton, who did not look good this past week against Buffalo, or do they get a little boost by getting Bryce Young back? Again, Green Bay heavy favorites either way, but that's what you're going to want to keep an eye on in the practices this week. Seems to be trending towards Bryce Young, but we won't know for sure probably until about a little bit later in the week. But on Wednesday, keep an eye on that practice report to see if Bryce Young was limited, if he was a full participant, or for some reason, if he wasn't practicing at all. But Packers and Panthers is what's on the horizon, again, coming up this Sunday. Now, many of you may know Schreiber as a leading global food and beverage manufacturer, but you may not know about Schreiber Horizon, which is a suite of solutions that Schreiber has built over the past 80 years and relies on every day to support and grow their vast global network. Some of these solutions include, but are not limited to, end-to-end logistics, warehouse management systems, and growth and innovation tools, and so much more. The best part is that these solutions are all backed by Schreiber's 80 plus years of trust and operational excellence. If you're interested in Schreiber's entire suite of solutions, just snap a picture of the QR code on the screen and you'll be one step closer to optimizing your business. You can also check them out over at schreiberhorizon.com, built on Schreiber's legacy, designed for what's next. Now let's get to that great conversation with Paul Bretl. It is time. You know exactly what time it is. It's Paul Bretl, the best on the beat, Wisconsin State Journal. Find him on social media at Paul_Bretl. Paul, how the heck are you doing, my friend?
Excellent, Andy. Happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Always great catching up with you. You do such an amazing job covering the team right there in person, covering it in the locker room and breaking down everything exactly the way you see it. I can't appreciate you enough for coming on every single week and chatting some Packers with us. As always, I will give you the floor to begin with and just kind of your key takeaways from Packers Steelers this week.
Well, I'm just going to dive right in. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Jordan Love's performance, which I know you've talked about. It's on everyone's mind, radar, right? Because it was excellent. And we can look at the stats, the efficiency, the ability to generate big plays. I think he averaged almost 10 yards per pass attempt, a hefty number in that regard. Yeah. His quarterback rating, I mean, across the board. And then you take into account the magnitude of that game, right? The matchup, who was on the other sidelines, and being able to have that type of performance in that game with so much hype, right? And additional coverage surrounding the game with Aaron Rodgers being on that sidelines. And it was just a terrific performance. And while the offense started to really put up points in the second half, Jordan Love was terrific from start to finish. Again, I mentioned the efficiency, the big plays, but his overall just operation of the offense was extremely clean. He was doing so at a high level, and that starts with the pre-snap calls, making the adjustments, knowing when to push the ball downfield versus when to take what was available, how he navigated the pass rush when it was around him in certain instances. I mean, he was operating at a really high level. And when we got to talk to him during the week, of course, he was aware, right, of what this in the NFL landscape, what this matchup meant, but kept reiterating, it's still Aaron Rodgers versus the Packers defense. It's still Jordan Love versus the Steelers defense, right? Those two weren't actually going head to head. So Love's focus that week remained on the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, and his play backed that up, right? And of course, that's where the focus always needs to be. That's where your attention needs to lie. But something Matt LaFleur often has talked about with Jordan Love, and I think one of his superpowers is his ability just to be even keeled, right? Remain
Yep.
the same regardless of the game, the outcome, what's unfolding. And I think that ability in these more higher profile games really shines through because, again, given his performance, his level of play on the field, you wouldn't have known that there was just all this extra hype and everything else around this game.
Yeah, a couple things. I love that he didn't shy away from the hype. Some people would just say, you know what, just another game. We're just, it's just Packer. He leaned into it. He was, clear and honest about it, transparent about it, which I loved. And then to your second point, I think even the more important one there is you wouldn't have known it for a second. If you were an outsider just watching football for the first time and looking at that game and saying, was Jordan overhyped in that game, or was he? No, he looked like just a silent assassin. He didn't blink. He went about his business on every single play. He had the answers. It looked like he had the answers to the test of every question that was being posed by the Steelers defense, whether it was a blitz, which he was phenomenal against. If you look at his numbers against the blitz, he shredded them. Against man-to-man coverage, it was the best performance against man-to-man coverage all season. It just didn't matter what Pittsburgh decided to do. He, again, knew exactly where to go with the ball. And again, I talked about this a little bit yesterday as well, but when Arizona played a lot of that too high safeties, it felt like he maybe got a little impatient, tried to put things, not in this game at all. If there was a check down there, he took it. When he needed to get rid of the ball quickly, he did. That anticipation throw to Romeo Doubs along the sideline before the screaming down, defensive back could get there, just had the answers to everything. It was really remarkable. Again, how he leaned into it, B, how prepared he was, and C, then just to go out and have that performance again, like a silent assassin, just a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, and to your point on taking what's available, right? It feels like that was a point of emphasis this week, because I think last week we discussed after the Cardinals game, LaFleur said both him as a play caller and then just the offensive operation, they got to be more willing to say, all right, if they're going to play too high and not give up these chunk plays, let's take what's available. Let's dial up things to take advantage of that rather than trying to generate that explosive play, maybe against some not so favorable coverages. So just given that comment from LaFleur after last week's game, and then like you said, how Love operated in that regard, might have been a big key point of emphasis for them. And then to the man coverage aspect of it, Steelers play a lot of that. Again, you credit the receivers for being able to create some separation, but then back to Love, that accuracy, right? Putting the ball exactly where it needs to be on those throws. Again, just a really impressive operation from the huddle to when the ball snapped through the execution of the play.
As far as Jordan Love goes, where do you put this on the list of Jordan Love performances so far in his career? Is it top 3, top 5, top 1? Where are you putting it?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I will go top 3, and I'm just going to say that to give myself a buffer in case I'm forgetting anything. Because like I said, passing yards in a game, that was the second most in his career. Passer rating in a game, that was his second highest in a game that he started. So statistically, right, it's already up there amongst the best. And then again, you put in just the everything surrounding this game, it has to put it up there as one of the best performances that he's had up to this point.
Yeah, I think the Dallas Cowboys game in the wild card is still probably 1A in my book, especially again knowing it's a playoff game and his first playoff game as a starter. That's probably 1A. I think this one to me is probably number 2 on that list. Again, knowing what went into that game, I still haven't finished grading this. I'm so excited to go and grade this in its entirety just to see everything on tape on this one. But as of right now, certainly putting in that top 3 and for off the top of my head, like you said, kind of number 2 right behind that Cowboys game. The other, there's a couple other interesting things on offense I wanted to touch base on. A week ago, Sean Ryan completely benched. 2 weeks ago, we saw the rotation come back. A week ago, we saw Sean Ryan completely benched, and that was Jordan Morgan's right guard spot. This week, rotation is back. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe Morgan started at right guard, but Ryan actually ended up with more snaps in this game. This continues to be a ongoing competition. Thoughts on if that should stay, what should happen, or even the sort of change in philosophy there this week going back to the rotation?
Yeah, I think improved play from the offense line is absolutely still needed, especially in the running game. And I asked offensive line coach Luke Butkus last week about Jordan Morgan's play, and he quickly transitioned that to just the play of that entire unit. And the big thing he said is, we just need more consistency. Like, there's been good moments from this group. However, there's been that lack of consistency as well, especially in the running game. And LaFleur talked about it on Monday. There's just these little details, right, that are being missed, whether that's hand placement, the fundamentals, the technique, how you're positioning yourselves. And it's not one player, right? It's not as simple as, well, this, Jordan Morgan's really struggling right now, or Sean Ryan's really struggling. It's one play, it might be Morgan. The next play, it might be Banks. Then it might be Elton Jenkins, right? It's just overall this lack of continuity amongst that group, particularly in the running game. And so I think going back to that rotation is just, you're trying to spark that competition, something we know the Packers are always going to lean into. And then you're still, I think to a degree, trying to search for some answers, right? Like, who can provide us with that stability up front? Because Manuel Wilson was able to find some success later on in the game, but those carries that he had in the fourth quarter, that really wasn't indicative to how the run game in particular was flowing in that game. And it's just lack of opportunities that are being created by that group for Josh Jacobs to go out and take advantage of. So that's absolutely something that they still have to search for, find answers to. And I think until there is something that they can grasp and say, all right, this is it, we're rolling right now, we're finding some success, we're in the right direction, I think that rotation is going to stay.
Felt like some of the best run blocking in this game was done by the tight ends and wide receivers and not by the offensive line. To me, with Morgan and Ryan, I don't think I can point to either of them and be like, yep, they're playing well enough that they should clearly be the starter. I think the competition makes sense. And if one of them is playing better, then yeah, go with the hot hand. And if they felt that was Morgan a week ago, then so be it. If they felt like it was Ryan this past week, then awesome. But I do think they have to continue to search for some answers. And I do think the run blocking, just they've got to find some solutions there. Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs doesn't need a ton of space to be able to create and get positive yardage. And it was really tough sledding for him in that game. I will say, though, on the flip side, for a defensive line that consists of TJ Watt and, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, and then, on the interior, Cam Hayward, their first round pick, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton. That's a really, really impressive defensive line, especially from a pass rush standpoint. And despite Jordan throwing, a ton in that game, or dropping back to pass a ton in that game, he wasn't sacked a single time. I do think they're starting to gel as a pass protection unit. But again, the run blocking still has a long ways to go.
Yeah, they were much better in that regard in the pass protection, like you said, especially given who they were going up against. But I think, just going back to the run game briefly, what stands out about that performance is, right, you look at Jacobs and just the lack of yards that they were able to generate. And as good as that Steelers front is from a pass rush perspective, I mean, they've been susceptible against the run. The week prior, the Bengals averaged over 6 yards per carry. I think the Steelers entered Sunday's game surrendering the fourth highest explosive run rate in football. So the opportunity has been there against that group, and the Packers still struggled to generate any of those chunk plays on the ground.
I did a little bit of a rant on Aaron Nagler's show on Monday. There's been a lot of consternation at times about the Packers play calling and whether it's good enough or whatever. I thought in this game there was some, I don't want to say lazy, but maybe uncreative, just half back up the middle out of shotgun, like nothing, too unique or anything. I thought it was a little bit bland at times, but I think the bigger thing is this team has to be able to run the ball in some capacity. You cannot just give up on it. And to me, all of the quote unquote bad play calling, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it can just come down to they're not run blocking. And so like early in the season, when they got off to early leads and everyone was like, Matt's taking his foot off the gas and you're not, you got to keep, playing aggressive. Well, it's him early in the season trying to get that run game going when they have a lead, which is again, a very clear and obvious thing to do when you've got a 2-score lead, is to develop the run game, try to run some clock, etc. But unfortunately, the run blocking wasn't good enough. They got stuffed a bunch, and then teams are able to kind of get back in the game a little bit. Now, early in games, and I think you go into this game against Arizona, you go against Cincinnati, you go against Pittsburgh, and you look at their run defenses and you say, we should be able to run the ball against these teams. Mm-hmm. Like, we've got to figure out a way to run. So they go a lot of heavy run stuff early, and then it doesn't work at all. And it's like, oh, the play calling is brutal. It's they can't, what is Matt LaFleur doing? It's like, well, they should be able to run the ball, but again, on the interior especially, they're not able to run the football. So then they have to kind of go a lot more pass heavy in the second half, and it looks great because again, their pass offense looks amazing. To me, all of it boils down to right now, they're not an efficient and effective running team. That doesn't absolve Matt overall of like, that's still his purview as well, of like making sure the run game is good and effective, etc. But I think all of this stuff of like, either you're not keeping your foot on the gas or you're not, calling good plays early in the game or whatever, it all boils down to just they can't run the ball effectively right now. And that's, to me, a huge issue for them moving forward.
I'm glad you brought that up, because, you see as the game's unfolding and, there's questions out there of, well, why are you running it in that situation? Or why are you just going between the tackles? And exactly, one, you want to, because look, the opponents, right? Like on paper and what you see on tape, like, okay, this is where there's opportunities for us. So you want to try to take advantage of that. And then two, to your point, you can't just stop running the ball, especially in the first and second quarter of a game, and become predictable and pass heavy. So I get why they're still trying to lean into it. And like you said, and I think LaFleur reiterated it on Monday, right? Talking about the details. It's execution at this point from those along, especially obviously the offensive line, but along the interior.
Yeah, they've got to get that a little bit better. And to me, it's all of that being said, they're the fifth scoring offense in the NFL. They're averaging over 27 points per game. They've got games already with 35 and 40 points respectively. And outside of a Cleveland game where they weren't able to do anything because their offensive line was so beat up in that game, which again still came down to the offensive line in a huge place and still probably should have won that game. They've been able to put up the points that they need to. So that to me is just the one thing that if all of a sudden that starts clicking, a lot of those play calling questions go away, and this offense is going to be consistently getting in the 30s and just to me becomes almost unstoppable, because I don't know what you do against them if Jacobs is going the way that he's capable of and what we've seen from Jordan Love in this passing offense so far. One of the aspects that a lot of people are wondering, and I am very well aware that this is just going to be next week, it's going to be, why didn't X player get so many targets? And then the week after that, it's going to be, why didn't Y player get so many targets? Matthew Golden did get, I think 4 targets in this game, or 3 or 4 targets in this game. He had 3 catches for 4 yards only though. And it does feel, maybe there's a little frustration there from Matthew Golden as well. I know he deleted his Instagram. It could have just been he's sick of social media. I feel that way sometimes as well. But whatever the case may be, it does feel like there's more out there for Matthew Golden with how talented he is. I think it could be something next week where he is the one that goes, 5 catches, 90 yards, and maybe a touchdown. But right now, it just seems like it's a little bit more of a, I don't know, just it seems like it's taking a lot of effort to kind of get him going, and it feels like it maybe should just be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, he's come through not just with big plays, but I think we talked about last week, like big moments, right? Key third downs, fourth downs, exactly, clutch plays. And like it or not, as LaFleur's described, right? Like the game flow, the matchups is going to dictate where the ball goes. Now, that doesn't mean they don't go into the game saying, all right, here's our plays for Matthew Golden, here's our plays for Romeo Doubs, and have situations where they want to dial that up. And I think a great example of that, Jason Vrabel, the passing game coordinator, described this past week. I forget if it was the Cincinnati game or the Arizona game, but there was this chunk play that Golden had as a pass catcher. And Vrabel said that was the 3rd time that game that they dialed that up, where it's meant to go to him. But the first 2 plays, or first 2 times that they did it, the coverage just didn't allow for the ball to go there, right? So just because there's these stretches where Golden isn't getting the ball, or honestly, any of these guys, right? Dobbs, Watson, whoever it may be in the situation, doesn't mean that there isn't this effort from the coaching staff. Now, always, can you maybe have more within the game plan? Like, we got to get this player the ball, or we have to make sure we do so early on. Sure. But I think, and we've seen how this Packers offense operates, the game flow, the matchups, right? That's going to ultimately dictate where the ball is going to go and who Jordan's going to give it to. So I understand wanting to see Golden get the ball more. He's earned those opportunities, right? He showcased what he can do. But I also think we need to be mindful of, it's not always just dial this up for Matthew Golden right here, because there's so many other moving parts and variables that are in play, especially when the Packers have so many pass catching options. Because again, that can be and has been a strength for this offense, right? When a defense doesn't know, like in a given situation, where the ball's going to go. Like we saw Malik Heath, right? Capitalize on his opportunities. And So there's just so many options. It spreads the defense out, gives the Packers opportunities to go elsewhere with it, that there's just a lot of moving parts when it comes to getting these guys involved.
Hey, friends, it's time to get our sleeper picks in for Packers Panthers this coming Sunday, noon in Lambeau Field. I'm excited for this game, and I'm going rookie heavy for my picks in this game. First of all, Matthew Golden. He's a little bit frustrated, hasn't been utilized more. 35 and a half receiving yards. I'm going more than 35 and a half receiving yards for Matthew Golden in this game. I think Matt LaFleur and this Packers offense will be a little bit more intentional in getting Matthew Golden the ball. I expect him to bounce back and have a big performance against Carolina. So Matthew Golden, more than 35 and a half receiving yards. On the flip side, for Carolina, Tet McMillan, more than 51 and a half receiving yards. So maybe a slightly high number here, but I expect Carolina is going to have to throw the ball to try to get back in this game at different points in this game. And I'm expecting that, once again, a big, tall, physical receiver on the outside is going to give Green Bay some troubles. And I'm expecting Carolina is going to try Tet McMillan early and often in this game. So Tet, more than 51 and a half receiving yards. And then Ryan Fitzgerald, their rookie kicker, more than 1.5 field goals made. Whether he makes it or not might be a little bit more interesting, but I expect this is going to be another bend but don't break performance from Green Bay's defense, which is going to allow Fitzgerald to have multiple field goal attempts. And I expect that he's going to make at least 2 of those. So Matthew Golden, more than 35 and a half receiving yards, Tet McMillan, more than 51 and a half receiving yards, and Ryan Fitzgerald, more than 1.5 field goals made. The best part is that you can get a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code Packaday over on Sleeper. Again, a 100% match by utilizing code Packaday over on Sleeper. Terms and conditions apply. Check those out over on Sleeper. And of course, they are available in over 25 states. So if you haven't checked it out yet, what are you waiting for? Get after it and get your Green Bay Carolina picks in for this week. There really is. And there's a lot of mouths to feed in the offense, which is a good thing. When you're putting up 360 passing yards and 35 points, quite frankly, I don't care who's getting the catches. It can be all John Fitzpatrick for all I care. As long as you're getting the production, that's what matters most. Kudos to Peter Bukowski for pointing this out over on social media, as much as it pains me to say that. So far, Matthew Golden has 26 targets, 21 receptions, 253 yards on the season so far. We're 7 games into the season. Randall Cobb in his rookie year, 31 targets, 25 receptions, 375 yards and a touchdown. That was for the entirety of that year. He played in 15 games that year in 2011. And then Randall Cobb followed that season up with his sophomore year with 80 catches for 954 yards and 8 touchdowns in year 2. So, sometimes rookie wide receiver is a tough thing. You're kind of behind the pecking order, and just Jordan has a lot of banked reps with guys like Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, etc., where he's still kind of working on that rhythm, timing, and just knowing when to go to Matthew Golden. But clearly, as you mentioned earlier, trusts him in those key moments. The key 4th down against Dallas that he converted, the key 3rd and long against Cincinnati that he converted. Yeah. So I mean, in some clutch moments, he's gone right to Matthew Golden, and Golden's delivered. To me, this is just a matter of time. It's a matter of when, not if. Matthew Golden's going to be a key piece of this offense. It may take a little bit longer than maybe some, and especially maybe even Matthew Golden want, but he's going to be more than fine.
Yeah, I agree.
As we look at this offense in general, we were talking about, kind of how there been a little bit of a struggle in the run game. The passing offense has looked much better. Does this need to become something where this is a pass-first offense and they get this passing game going, even if it's, using the quick passing game as a quote-unquote extension of the run game to then sort of set up the run game? I know that this is going to be something that's dictated on how the defense is playing and they ultimately need to run the football. It just feels like running things through Jordan Love right now has worked a little bit better than trying to set up the run and maybe trying to get the passing game going off of it.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the quick game, it feels like the Dallas game was kind of the starting point of that, where the quick throws, the screens, where if you just get 4 or 5 yards on first down, like that is essentially your running game, right? It's putting you in a manageable down and distance ahead of the sticks, where now you can do a little bit more of the dictating offensively. So we've already seen, like you said, that element, I think, take hold and become a greater part of this offense with the run game struggling. And I think for the time being, like we said, you still have to lean into the run game to a degree. You still have to try to get that going, because it just does, in the Matt LaFleur offense, just does so much for the passing game and every other aspect of it. But I think at this point, your willingness to pivot has to be a little bit quicker, just because you don't have that, well, we can hang, if you're struggling early, they can't necessarily hang their hat and say, all right, well, we'll figure it out. We've done this before, because that's been kind of few and far between. So I think that's where things have to be. And if you can lean into the passing game, find that early success through the air, generate that lead, maybe that can then be a spark for your running game, right? Pass early to give yourself the lead, let your running game get going and take it away, right? If you're finding success through the air, it starts to back up the defense a little bit. Maybe there's fewer, heavier boxes, more advantageous running opportunities. And then you can start in that second half, finding some of that success on the ground, just building some positive banked that cohesiveness along the offensive line and really just building it from there. So I still think you go into the game plan with, all right, here's our running game, here's what we want to do. But at this point, if it's struggling, I think you got to pivot a bit quicker to the pass game.
I think that's fair. I think the ultimate answer is just they have to be more efficient running the football, like we talked about. And once that gets a little bit cleaned up, I think it's going to look a lot more efficient and effective overall on offense. Let's flip it around to the defensive side of the ball. We talked about the rotation along the offensive line. In this one, Green Bay goes away from any sort of rotation and just says, Carrington Valentine, you're the guy at corner. A lot of people were calling for that after the performance of Nate Hobbs against Arizona. I didn't think Green Bay was going to do it. I thought at best or worst, however you want to look at it, it would be a rotation between the two and they'd maybe both play. This was Carrington Valentine full on. Nate Hobbs had a few snaps in this game, but a big change for that secondary.
Yeah, I was on, obviously, Sports Lead last week, ESPN Lacrosse, and John asked me, he goes, what are they going to do at cornerback? And that was literally an hour after we had talked to Jeff Hafley, and I was like, look, they're sticking with Nate Hobbs, because there was just so much conviction behind that, and LaFleur had talked about the confidence that week that he has in Hobbs as well. But yeah, just a complete 180, leaning heavily on Carrington Valentine. And I think, too, this wasn't just a situation of Nate Hobbs is struggling, just go to the next man up. I think what they've seen in practices, right? This is also Carrington Valentine earning those reps, earning that opportunity, because like you said, it didn't just go to a rotation and, all right, let's see how he compares. Like, he got all of the snaps. And I think that's a credit to Valentine and what he's put on, or what he showcased during practices. And LaFleur talked about it on Monday, just his competitiveness. I mean, that play that still ended up being a touchdown, still fighting through it. The throw, I think it was to DK Metcalf, left side of the end zone. Like, there was extended effort to break that up. What would have been a touchdown catch. I mean, he is a very, very, and they all are, but you really see the competitiveness from Carrington Valentine on the field. And he's just that competitiveness, the confidence that he has, it just makes him such a strong, pure coverage cornerback, right? And that's what this cornerback position, the secondary, really needs right now. So LaFleur said it's still going to be a competition. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden there's a rotation in this Sunday's game, but I don't think it's going to go back to just being Nate Hobbs. I think Valentine has definitely earned more opportunities with how he played this past week.
Yeah, no, I think so too. He just has that perfect cornerback demeanor where, like, the play before doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's going against prime Randy Moss or some practice squad corner. He's just thinking he's going to beat the person across from him every single time. Doesn't always work out for him, but there's just an endearing quality to him where, like, even when he gives up a play, it's like, that's okay. He was right there and he did everything he could. And I don't know, there's something about him that I think we all love. And I still think, and we've seen it so much in practice, Paul, of his ball skills and his ability to play with instincts and go. Like, I'm still waiting for some of these picks to happen with Carrington Valentine, because he is so instinctual and he is so instinctive and he knows how to jump some of those routes. Like, it still, to me, just feels like it has to be a matter of time before that comes through in games, because we've seen it so many times in practice that he has that. So no, I love it. I'm glad they made the switch, and I think it was the right move overall. Going to the linebacker position, I'll be the first to admit one of the things that's either a blind spot for me or I just don't spend a lot of time on is, like, these personal sort of growth stories. Like, I love the X's and O's. I love breaking down film. I love who can fit where and everything. But I will have to say, one of the cool moments of this game was Quay Walker, when you've got the situation where I think it was DK is like grabbing his face mask and looks like it's almost poking his eye. And, rookie Quay Walker, second year Quay Walker, maybe even third year Quay Walker is, probably going to blow up and push back and knock him down. And at best, you're going to maybe get offsetting penalties or something in that situation. Could even see a world in which younger Quay Walker might have got ejected in that situation. And here, He just calmly takes it and doesn't do anything. It gets a big 15-yard penalty on DK Metcalf, I think, to set up a 3rd and long in that situation instead of a 3rd and very short, which was a big moment in that game. And it just showed the growth, the maturity. And again, it shows why he's wearing that C on the front of his chest as well.
Yeah, head over to The Athletic. Matt Schneidman had a really good story on after speaking to Walker and about all of that. And LaFleur said that they counted that, I guess, non-play, right, by Walker as a turnover because it took the Steelers, I think, to 3rd and 17 with that 15-yard penalty, ended up punting. And again, late game, key moment, right? So that was, as LaFleur said, that was a really important response, or I guess in that situation, lack thereof, from Quay Walker. And I asked Jeff Hafley last week about Quay's play this season, because against in the Arizona game, I mean, as a blitzer, he was just relentless getting after the quarterback in that game. And Hafley said that what he's seen from Quay this season on the field is just an elite level of play at the linebacker position. And that's, again, getting after the quarterback. It's how he's operating in space and coverage. But this is year 2 now of him being the play caller, the Mike linebacker for this Packers team. And his just comfort with all of the responsibilities that come with wearing the green dot defensively. He's just at a different level this year after having all those reps under his belt. And we saw that start to take hold last season, right during that second half before he started to deal with some injuries. But he's playing at a high level right now. His understanding of the offense. I mean, Hafley talks about in practice sometimes, and maybe even in games, where Quay's already like finishing the play caller, already knows what Jeff Hafley is going to dial based on the situation, down and distance opponent. Like, just his overall understanding of the defense is extremely high. And then that's translating to, right, fast physical play on the field.
Well, you saw early in his career, it was almost that extra second to diagnose and then you sort of trigger. And now it just feels like he's triggering right away and knows exactly what to do, exactly where to go. And a downhill Quay Walker is exactly what you want. Just him playing with instinct and flying to the football, because we know he's got the speed, the athleticism, the talent, the physicality, and now all of that is shining through. And then again, the mental wherewithal, the calmness under pressure, like just all of it. He's really become a complete linebacker. I'm still expecting that contract extension to get done at some point here for Quay Walker, because I'm assuming, especially with him calling the plays, being a captain, being the guy in the middle of that defense, I have a feeling that's going to be somebody that they want to lock up for some period of time. Another one from his same draft class, same college, Devonte Wyatt returned to the game this week, and no real like massive impact plays in this game, but you could also tell just another rusher on the interior. A lot of collapsing of the pocket on Aaron in this game, which I thought was a point of emphasis to not allow him those little escape routes or a little bit of extra time. And I think Devonte was certainly a big piece of that, and just great to see him back out there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if you want to know about Devonte Wyatt's impact this season, just go talk to Micah Parsons. Anytime Devonte Wyatt's name comes up with Micah, just ultimate praise for him in his level of play, the competitiveness, the juice he brings to that interior defensive line, and of course the trickle-down effect that has to the rest of the front seven. I mean, before his injury against Dallas, he was tied for the most pressures in football amongst defensive tackles. So been playing really, really well this season. And again, if Micah Parsons is repeatedly mentioning your level of play and your impact and what you mean to that defense, I think that says everything about where Wyatt is right now.
Yeah, very much so. Excited to have him back. I think he played like 35-ish snaps in that game. And as he ultimately gets healthier, I think he'll even make a bigger impact and probably play a little bit more in the game as well. I don't. Do you want to talk special teams, Paul? Can you give me any good news on Packers special teams? Is there anything positive we can say?
They closed out with some field goals that they needed in the second half, 3 for 3 on extra points. But yeah, I was as I was watching the game, obviously taking my notes and keeping tabs. I know I noted there were 2 penalties on the special teams unit. Obviously, we saw the missed kicks from McManus. There was Nixon's muff punt attempt in that game as well. So still, they overcame the missed field goals, right? There was nothing that we would put into the catastrophic category, I guess, outside of that. But yeah, very much still a work in progress.
Oh, I made a list. The 2 holding penalties you mentioned, the muff punt, 2 missed field goals. You had the kickoff go into the end zone, so they got it at the 35. You had 2 kick returns, one that went to the 25, one that went to the 23, and the one that bounced in the landing zone and then into the end zone, so that you had to take it on your own 20. So yeah, but like you said, they finished a little bit stronger. They did recover the onside kick. That was important. They got some field goals, a couple extra points. Daniel Whelan did have a punt inside the 20. That's a positive, but yeah, just the enough errors to like what would feel like 3 or 4 weeks of most special teams, and they're able to accomplish it in one game. So it's just got to get cleaned up. And the thing I don't feel great about is Nick Nyman, their stud, special teams ace. Looks like he's going to miss potentially an extended period of time. Maybe even if it's a torn pec, I would assume that probably pretty much ends his season. Hopefully it's not. We don't have a confirmation as we're recording this yet, but that's a potentially big blow. I would assume Christian Welch would potentially be somebody off the practice squad that's got that special teams and linebacker experience, but we'll have to see what they do if he is out an extended period of time.
Yeah. Neiman had, I know he had 10, according to PFF, 10 special teams tackles. I think solo special teams tackle. I think second on the team right now is 6. So he's been, well, we obviously the miscues are what's going to stand out. He has been one of the bright spots for that group.
Yeah, not great to lose one of the only things that's going well on special teams. That's for sure. Quick thoughts on Packers Panthers before we get you out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to be a broken record on this, but get the run game going. I think that's honestly one of the biggest things moving forward. And I mentioned it last week as well, I know. But we've talked about it. It's just so critical to the overall success of this offense. And as good as this passing game has looked for stretches, there is more out there for this group when that run game is going and they are operating in short down and distances, and they can lean into the play action element. So when we talk about what's the ceiling for this Packers offense, getting that run game going is going to help them get to that point. So another week, let's see if they can find some success there.
I watched a film breakdown of somebody. I don't know if they were just an NFL analyst or a Bills analyst or a Panthers analyst or what the situation was, but I saw he broke it. He was incredible breaking it down. The Bills ran the same run play 9 times against the Carolina run defense and picked up 95 yards with James Cook on that same concept over and over and over again. And Carolina just couldn't stop it. They finally made some adjustments. On the 8th play, they made an adjustment and played an overfront rather than an underfront, or maybe it was reversed. And they were able to stop it for like a 3-yard gain. And then on the 9th play, they came out and played it the exact same way they did previously. And except they tried to slant it a little bit more aggressively because they were beating them with this toss play. And then Cook just cut it in the opposite direction, went for like a 25, 30-yard touchdown on the play. So Carolina was really struggling against James Cook and that Bills run offense. There should be some opportunity there to get it going. But we've said that in the past against Cincinnati, Arizona, Pittsburgh, etc., and it hasn't come to fruition. So hopefully this week is the week and they can finally get that run game going and really put up some production against Carolina. Paul, I see you got the Bucks hat on. How are you feeling about those 2-1 Bucks so far?
It's been fun to watch. I mean, they're moving up and down the court, and Giannis leading the way as always. So it's been fun. Yeah, I mean, I don't have super high expectations, which is maybe making it a little bit more fun, but I've enjoyed the brand of basketball so far, which is all I can kind of ask for at this point. Paul, you're the absolute best. Where can we find all of your incredible work? Appreciate it, Andy. Follow me on Twitter at Paul_Bretl. Find my work at the Wisconsin State Journal. Find me on Sports Lead, ESPN Lacrosse, 105.5 Monday through Friday. He's the best. Follow him on social media at Paul_Bretl. You can find me at Andy Herman NFL. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back next Tuesday, hopefully breaking, or I guess Wednesday when you're listening to it, breaking down another Packers win over the Carolina Panthers if all goes according to plan. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.